Hello and welcome back to goldstocktrades.com. Today we have a special guest with us, Colin Cattell. Colin is executive chairman of Newfound Gold, which can be traded as NFG on the TSX Venture. It's one of the exciting IPOs of this year. Thank you, Colin, for being here with us today and for giving us that are new to the story an introduction to what you have been working on for a couple of years in the making and what there's been a lot of buzz recently in the mining space about a recent discovery that you've made. So thanks, Colin, for being here with us and giving us an introduction to the company.
Hey, Jeb, thanks so much for having me on. I'd be happy to give you a background on Newfound Gold and a little bit of backstory to that. You and I met, gosh, I think it was 2013. And I remember at the time, I had known of you quite well. You were very successful in the last cycle. And one of the stories that you were very early on was Frontier Gold, which was a story that I was very familiar with in my young age, as my father had helped to found it. And it ultimately was bought out for a sizable number by Newmont. And I remember you were one of the big newsletter writers who brought visibility to that story. So it's been quite some time since we've known each other. I'll jump right into it. Back in 2015, I wanted to put together a district size gold play somewhere at home in North America. 2015, in hindsight, marked the bottom of the gold cycle. And I had an inkling at the time that things were just very cheap and it was the right time to try to put something big together. And so my co-founder, Denny Laviolette, who's a geologist, we ended up in Newfoundland pretty quickly. And at the time in 2015, Newfoundland was a very obscure jurisdiction from a gold perspective. And that was despite the fact that we found out a few very big positives right off the bat. Namely, Newfoundland is very, very mining friendly. It's very simple as well to permit and drill and explore in Newfoundland. They don't have First Nations groups, which is unusual for Canada and just adds an extra level of complexity towards exploration if you have them. They also have a very skilled workforce, and the property that we ended up picking up, Jeb, had the main highway of Newfoundland running right through it. So what we did is we started putting together this project, which is called the Queensway North. It took us about a year to put together. There was 9 option holders at the time that held it. What really excited us about it, aside from it being right off the highway in Newfoundland, is there was gold all over the surface. You could quite literally go out and pan gold from the surface. It was the first time I panned gold. And there was also about 200 historic drill holes. These were drill holes that were done in the 80s and early 2000s by Noranda and then Rubicon. And they found a lot of exciting stuff. It just barely was not exciting enough in that gold price environment for them to focus all of their attention on it. And so they found the smoke, if you will, but they didn't find the fire. So we put this project together, 9 option holders, and that's what's now called Queensway North. And then in 2017, we attracted Rob McEwen. He saw our vision as well, and he gave us a nice sized check. And we took that money and we went ahead and we staked a huge amount of ground. So we added about 100 kilometers through staking to the south of the project by about 20 kilometers wide. And we started doing some very intense exploration work. So we were flying airborne surveys. We did one of the largest till programs ever in Canada. And we were trying to find all that smoke at surface so that we could then go with drilling and find the fire. And the first drilling that we did was in November of last year, November of 2019. And we got very lucky, but that was on top of all the hard work that we did. And we drilled the best hole ever recorded in the province. So we hit 19 meters of 93 grams per ton gold. And that intercept, of course, was very exciting. But what got us really excited is Dr. Quinton Henning. Dr. Quinton Henning was involved in the Swan Zone discovery at Fosterville. And as many of your readers know, Jeb, Fosterville is the most profitable gold mine on planet Earth. It's held by Kirkland Lake. It's basically built Kirkland Lake into the producer it is. And Quentin looked at our drill core. He put it right next to the drill core that he saw in Fosterville at the Swan Zone. And he said, guys, you've hit an exact analogy to the Swan Zone, but on the opposite side of the Earth. And he proceeded to invest through Novo, his company, $15 million into Newfound. This was back in January of this year. And then fast forwarding, we did an IPO with Bank of Montreal and Canaccord, and we raised another roughly $30 million. That was in early August. And that brings us to today. We're publicly traded. We're about a $300 million market cap. We have about $80 million of working capital. And we're currently underway with one of the most aggressive drill programs in Canada. So starting here in a couple weeks, the assays are going to begin to tell us what we're finding, and we're going to find out what we have here, Jeb, and I'm pretty excited to find out.
And I heard on last Friday on the Sprott Money show, I heard Eric Sprott, who's a large shareholder as well, mention this last week. And you're going to have a 100,000-meter drill program, and that's pretty much all. Is that already underway?
That's already underway. We started drilling about 3 weeks ago. As of the beginning of this week, we had 2 rigs on site. So we've now got 2 drills turning. And by the end of September, early October, we're going to be up to 4 rigs turning. And, you add the amount of rigs that we have turning with the fact that we're drilling shallow targets. So our discovery hole is made at a depth of about 95 meters. It's very rare to find this kind of high grade so close to surface, but what it means is, for every meter that you drill, you're going to be getting a much higher hit rate in terms of, reaching your target area. So we should be seeing a lot of intercepts in the zone of mineralization that we're looking for. And yeah, you brought up Eric. Eric's been a huge supporter of ours. He initially came in the beginning of 2019. And as soon as we had our drill hit in November, Eric, along with Rob McEwen, gave us an additional $8 million. They also exercised their warrants at the IPO date for another $12 million. So these guys are big believers in what we're doing, and they've both been major supporters of ours.
Yeah, and Rob McEwen and Novo and Eric Sprott. This seems and this must be one of the largest programs, I guess, of us. I mean, 100,000 meters in Canada, or and especially in Newfoundland, it must be one of the largest programs.
I think we can safely say it's the largest program currently going on in Newfoundland. There are some more advanced explorers out there. One could think of Osisko at Windfall, for example, that might be drilling a little bit more aggressively than us. But for a true grassroots discovery of this nature, we're hitting this thing hard, and we're well capitalized to do that with the bank account that we have. So we're going to potentially add more than the initial 4 rigs if we have success, and this could turn into bigger than a 100,000 meter program over the first 12 months.
So, Colin, tell us about how you were able to discover this. I mean, that drill result of what was that, almost 93 grams per ton over 19 meters. What was the work that you did to that? I guess are you following up on that Keat zone, or is there more zones that you're going to be looking at, or is the drilling going to be focused on that, or there's also a lot of different zones on this property. I mean, if you could discuss the what the focus is, it just seems like there's so much potential here.
That's a great point, Jeb. The drill hole itself was very exciting, like I said, but once we put it into context of what might be there, what's the overall gold mineralized system, that's what got us excited. That's what got Quentin excited, and that's what got the participants of the IPO, who a lot of them were institutional investors, excited that they saw not just a one hole wonder, but something that could turn into millions, maybe tens of millions of ounces if we continue to find what we have. I'm not a geologist, so I'm going to speak in layman terms that I understand. But there's two main structures that run the length of the property, and they're called the Appleton Fault and the JBP Fault. And these structures are very prominent on the north side at Queensway North. They've been well known and documented since back in the late 80s when Noranda started exploring. But they also run the full length of our property. So you're talking about 100 kilometers in length of these faults running. And there's a lot of exploration to be done to see if those faults are mineralized in other places. We know for sure that at the Keats Zone, which is where we made the discovery, that it is mineralized, and it's mineralized in a fantastic way. And to touch on your question on where are we following up, yes, we're recording this on Friday, and we are currently drilling, as announced earlier this week. We're currently drilling at the Keats Discovery Zone. Quentin Henning, along with our Chief Operating Officer, Greg Matheson, have been really instrumental in pointing out how to drill this and leading the drill program. Taking a note from the Swan Zone at Fosterville, this is an incredibly high-grade system. It's also at nice widths, so 19 meters of width is very nice width for this high-grade vein. But at the Swan Zone, you very closely stick to that vein and you step out. Traditionally, with different types of projects, you might step out 50 meters, 100 meters, and find out what you have. That's not the strategy that we're taking here. The strategy we're taking is we've essentially designed a box of 8 holes around that initial discovery hole, and we're going to drill all 8 sides, so the 4 corners and the top, bottom, left, and right. And what that's going to tell us is what's the orientation of the vein, which way is this vein running, is the vein getting stronger in grade or weaker in grade from one side to another. And as soon as we see that, we'll then step out an additional 10 meters and so on, and we'll follow this. And I don't have the number in front of me directly, but our CEO, Craig Roberts, is a mining engineer by background. I don't remember if it's $20 million or $30 million of gold, but for every 10-meter step out that you do at that kind of grade, if we continue to hit it, every hole adds another $20 to $30 million of gold in the ground. So it's a fantastic value adder if we can continue to delineate this zone. At the same time, we've got a couple other rigs that are going to be turning at other places. We've already drilled a few holes at what's called the Powerline Little Zone. That's a brand new target that has not been drilled in many years, and we've recently done some trenching at surface and uncovered some higher grade. So we're testing that zone. We also announced in our release a few days ago that we're testing a zone that's 2 kilometers to the north. That's called the Lotto Zone. So once again, there's been high grade on surface. There's been high grade hits recorded in the past from drilling, but where there's smoke, we're looking for the fire. And fortunately, the guys that were in there back 10, 20, 30 years ago were drilling very, very shallow holes. And we think that beneath that shallow mineralization hosts the potential for much higher grade and bigger amounts of gold. And if we're right, we're going to begin to delineate a system that's open pittable and also is comparable in grades to some of the best gold mines on Earth.
Colin, many investors that are new to the mining sector that have come in may not have realized that in May of last year, Australia's St. Barbara, they bought the Canada's Atlantic Gold for about 536 million, and that was when gold didn't really even break out through 1400 yet. Gold's at around almost 2,000 an ounce, and this company is just starting New Found Gold. Could you maybe highlight for those who are new to the recent interest, because you've been in early into this area? I know Atlantic Gold is somewhat near where New Found is operating, and remind investors the potential here with New Found Gold.
Yeah, for sure. There's kind of two things going on here geographically on a much more macro level. You've got what's called the Iapetus Fault, which runs all the way from the UK through the ocean into Newfoundland, back into the ocean into Nova Scotia, and then back into the ocean and surfaces again in South Carolina. And we detail that in our deck with a much more geologic approach. That has had several discoveries. Dalradian, for example, Atlantic. Down in South Carolina, you've got the Hale deposit. So while this is a very old system created hundreds of millions of years ago, it has produced several newer discoveries. On a much more localized scale, when we first came to Newfoundland in 2015, there was very few mineral claims held. And if you fast forward to today, it's almost like the Athabasca Basin, Jeb, back in 2006, where the entire basin went from being empty to filled all the way to the center. And so there's a big staking rush that's unfolded. There's a lot of interest in Newfoundland, but it's in its nascent stage. For example, we don't see a single major that has a foothold in the province yet. That's certainly going to change. I can think of, for example, the Yukon, which a few years ago didn't have a major, had very few investments, and then Goldcorp came in and really lit the province up. So I think a similar thing could happen for Newfoundland, and hopefully it's newfound gold and continued discoveries being made there that are going to bring that attention. And there'll be certain to be other finds and other discoveries in the province. The more money that's spent and the more money that rushes in just increases the odds of discoveries being made. And that's very, very exciting. In terms of the upside here, if we delineate something that's in the well, let me draw a direct analogy to Fosterville. If Quinton Henning is correct in his assessment that we found another swan zone on the opposite side of the earth, the swan zone sold to Kirkland Lake from Newmarket for $1 billion back in 2015. That was at the bottom of the market. It was at much lower gold prices. And it was also a sale of an asset that majors did not know that they wanted yet. Majors are so used to looking for lower grade, big tonnage deposits. It wasn't until Kirkland Lake turned into a formidable major producer that the other majors realized that maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they should have been focused on something different, something new. And Newmarket, in finding the Swan Zone, really has laid the foundation for us that if we find something similar, people are going to immediately recognize the future potential, the value of that. And I think we could realize something much greater in terms of a takeover than they did back in 2015.
So you can get more info at newfoundgold.ca. Today we're speaking with the executive chairman, Colin Cattell, who we've known for many years, and we've seen his advancement in the mining sector. Newfound Gold is well cashed up to drill 100,000 meters. They have almost $80 million in working capital. They have some great high-grade drill results that they're following up on. Colin, could you mention for U.S. investors, I know this is a new company, and there's a lot of U.S. retail investors that may be interested in getting a starter position. Could you talk to them about what you're working on so that you could be open for U.S. investors?
We've had a tremendous amount of U.S. investors reaching out to us, and unfortunately, we don't yet have an OTC listing, but we're actually going to likely skip the OTC entirely and work towards a NYSE listing, a New York Stock Exchange listing. So we're exploring that at the moment, and we'll likely have some information out to the market on the timeline for that. In the meantime, though, we've had several U.S. investors who work with, say, TD Ameritrade or Schwab, and they have called the trading desk and told them that they wanted to buy NFG.V, Newfound Gold, and several people have been able to buy it through their global system. So for now, unfortunately, that's the easiest way to do it, but there is a way to do it, it sounds like.
So newfoundgold.ca. You can get more information on the website. There's also you can sign up for their email so that you can get the news when it's published, when the drilling results are published. And the management team has a pledge to be in touch with any investor inquiries within 24 hours. So if you'd like to do more due diligence or speak to someone on the management team or investor relations, they're committed to returning phone calls and emails. So Colin, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been great to see your career progress to this point, and we're so excited and hope for great news for the company and for your shareholders at Newfound Gold. And please keep us updated. Hopefully, when news is published, you can return and highlight what's going on with the drilling program, or if there's any discoveries. Hopefully, you could highlight that once again. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Jeb. Really appreciate you having me on the program.